I've spent 20 years producing movies for Marty Scorsese and Wim Wenders and Gus Van Sant, and there was a strike, 2 strikes this summer in Hollywood, specifically about AI and the creative class. So from the writer's point of view, Marvel wanted the ability to put every single screenplay they'd ever owned into a large learning model like ChatGPT. And then instead of paying a screenwriter $500,000-$600,000 to write a first draft screenplay for a new Marvel movie, they would now have a prompt writer, and that person would basically put into maybe 3 paragraphs, Captain America meets the Hulk in Iceland. In the second act, Black Widow comes in and saves the day. Third act, it ends here. And literally in 4 or 5 hours, the large learning model would turn out a first draft screenplay. Okay, first now they got a problem. The Copyright Office will not give a copyright to anything that's been written by a machine. So then they'd hire some poor out-of-work screenwriter and they say, okay, take this and polish it, and we'll let you put your name on it. So then they could get a copyright.
How many books on Amazon now are actually written by ChatGPT?
There's about 350 books on Amazon that are co-written by ChatGPT. Now, when I say co-written, I probably mean that they were written by ChatGPT and somebody who wrote the prompt put their name on it so they could get a copyright and they could publish it on Amazon, self-publish it.
Do they have to split, a serious question, do they have to split the royalties with
well, look,
OpenAI?
Look, the New York Times is suing OpenAI. I'm on the board of the Authors Guild.
Yeah.
We're suing OpenAI on behalf of all the authors. And basically we're saying, how did you do this? You took all this content into your machine without any permission, all of its copyright, so I can put into ChatGPT, write me a Stephen King short story that's set in Vermont in 1950s, and it will do it. I can say to Google's music model, write me a Bob Dylan-like anti-war song from the 1960s. And it will do it. And it will actually sound kind of like a Bob Dylan, too. You know, there's a quite famous incident last fall where Drake and Weeknd seem to have done a duet. Now, these are 2 rappers who've been fighting for years. And so this duet was going up on Spotify and it went to #1 instantly. It had about 6 million downloads. And it turned out neither Drake nor Weeknd had anything to do with it.
Wow.
A person made it using their voices and made a new song and published it. Now, fortunately, the record companies came down on Spotify like a ton of bricks and they took it down. But that's going to be a continuing problem. From the actor's point of view, the actor's strike was essentially about studios want to be able to take somebody's body and scan it and then own it for a one-time payment, own that body. So instead of paying for an extra, and as you know, Tom, the only way you can actually get into the Screen Actors Guild is by being an extra and then a director giving you 1 line. You get 1 line, then you can get your Screen Actors Guild card. So essentially what they were going to do was make a data bank of bodies which they could then clothe, period, contemporary, futuristic, put different hair on them, and they would own that body forever for a one-time payment.
Well, they also have the technology now to take actors who passed away, Sidney Poitier, for instance, and star him in your current movie.
Right.
And he will sound exactly like.
Right. And these deepfakes will come in everywhere. You know, I mean, one of the things that I'd like everybody to kind of think about in terms of AI is the following. The head of OpenAI, Sam Altman, says that in the next 10 years, he calls it the marginal cost of intelligence will fall very close to zero because of AI. And essentially, what he sees is that white-collar workers will be put out of work. So I have a friend who ran for many years the largest PR firm in Hollywood. And at the height of his success, he had about 100 workers. And he said about 75 of them had no job but to create content, write press releases. And he said if he ran it today, he would run the firm with about 5 people to be salespeople, and the generative AI would do all the press releases. And they probably have someone to edit them and punch them up, but basically. So these are white-collar workers who are making $150,000 a year. They're going to be put out of business. Now, Altman says the only solution to this, because he thinks there would be riots in the streets, would be for the government to put what he calls universal basic income.
Right.
In other words, the government would pay everybody a certain flat amount of money to stay home in their pajamas. Now, that raises a lot of questions.
Do you think?
First off, you know, a lot of people from Epicurus on have said that work is what gives us meaning.
Right.
So if you didn't have work, what would you feel like? And I have a friend, Angus Deaton, who teaches at Princeton, who's written about deaths of despair. And a lot of his work has been about people who went on disability, the factory cleared out of the town, they went on disability, they end up spending all day playing video games, and eventually they increase their OxyContin to the point that they kill themselves. So this worries me a lot.
Yes.
And so there's 2 ways to think about this. You know, what does that mean? Is there any political will to create such a thing as universal basic income? And what would a society like that be?
Yeah.
And on one level, I think, well, maybe for that copywriter at the PR firm who always wanted to write a novel, he wouldn't be earning as much, but he wouldn't have to pay for childcare.
Yes, yeah.
He'd be home all day. He could write that novel. Or maybe if in my neighborhood there were 50 people that were had no work to do, and my friend Dennis up the street wanted to put up a small building to make it for an office, that we'd all, like the Amish, come together and do a barn raising, right? We'd build him his house. So, I mean, that's, if you're trying to think of what's the upside of it, maybe there's a thing, but I have a hard time imagining this is going to be a real thing.